Welcome to On a Journey. I'm Paul Prado, and this is old farm equipment in the citrus industry in Highland, California. This is a spring tooth, and you can see my hands are holding these spring tooth or tines of a fork, if you will, digging this way. There are 3 big ones this way and 3 more at an angle in between, and here's one. I'm sure there was another one there because I see the holes. This device was used in the farming industry and in Highland in particular for weed abatement. They had to dig up the soil, so this was attached to horses, or later on I'm sure to tractors. So you have this device where you could lift the springs. There you go. And it would dig into the earth. It's got serial numbers. Silver line. This is a silver line spring tooth. You could, with a little WD-40, a little oil and monkey grease, this thing would work like a charm today in 2018. This is one great piece of history of Highland, California. Here we are at a citrus farm, and we're going to look at some of the wagons and some of the pieces that are part of the history that made this area great. This, I don't know if you can hear that on the video, this is solid steel. And I'm sure each of these wheels and axles were forged that we learned about other wheels that are in adjacent properties here off of Green Spot Road in Highland, California. This is a remnant of a wagon. I'm sure the wagon was multi-used and you can use it for anything, but this particular one was a low wagon, not the kind of chuck wagon that you'd see in pioneer days, but the axles and the wheels, you could see the spokes over there, you could see the axle hub over there. It was a low-lying wagon that carried fruit in the citrus groves here in Highland, California. It wasn't converted for tractor pulls because, as you could see, well, it's pretty rotted out and dilapidated and weather-worn, but there's a tongue over there that you can tell because of the tongue it wasn't converted to a wagon. So this whole area is ripe with history. This is a longer wagon. This is more of a wagon that you'd be accustomed to seeing. You can see it's my chest high. I'm not 6 foot tall, so I'm sure it's still pretty high. And it was more of a stake bed with sides to it to carry fruit to and from the fields. This wood's been around since the 1800s. These axles have been around since the 1800s, and these spokes and these rims and all the chains and the devices that you see here have withstood the test of time. It's remarkable what you see in the city of Highland. Incredible. Here I am on a hard flatbed trailer. You can see it's modified. The other one had cast iron spokes, cast iron hub. You could see that the parts are similar. This trailer was modified, obviously, with rubber tires circa 1920. This was donated to this particular grove by the Crams. If you've heard the term Crams before, it's a very prominent name in the Inland Empire, Highland, and Redlands. This flatbed had these long slats to swamp the groves, they called it. Swamping the groves is just getting the crops out of the groves. We use certain slang terms for certain things. Here you've got these rings that are still intact from the 1920s. They've got serial numbers still. They use these to tie it down just like you would a modern day trailer. You see this different kind of tongue that was used to connect it to a tractor. The other one we had was horse-drawn. So as you can see throughout the movement here through this grove, we're getting more modern equipment to get crop out of the grove. These here are to store the rope that you're going to need to tie down your load. I am sure that the boxes went above this headboard, And as you can see, some of these slats are obviously missing, but you've got the nuts and bolts and the assembly equipment that made this. Down here, if you look at the tongue, it's for a tractor or a vehicle. But they used a tractor instead of a truck because the incline was too steep for a truck. Tractors have that low gear, so they're able to pull this thing to swamp the groves out up on the other part of the McLean Ranch. Does this look familiar to you? This looks like the little seed or fertilizer dispenser you have from your garden. This is a nitrogen fertilizer dispenser. It broadcasts the fertilizer down below from the disc, and it's two directional. There's a lever that can lock one side of this hopper so that you can shoot the fertilizer in a desired direction, or close that door and open the other door. This was used in the farming industry, and particularly here in Highland, California, in the citrus industry. You can see it's solid steel, just like everything that we've been seeing, and it has withstood the test of time. Pretty durable. I'm sure if somebody fixed a lot of this stuff up, you could be using it now in 2018. This seems like an obscure piece of pipe. You're thinking like we've seen in other implements we've had here on the farm in this grove here. They're just piled up. This had a practical application. When the disc went over the ground, or when the spring tooth went over the ground, it was uneven or jagged, and it just, you needed to make things even. So this pipe was attached to the back, and you can see it right here. You can see it, here it is. Here's the chain. It was coupled to the back end of the disc or the spring tooth, and it would smooth out all the furrows and make everything flush on the ground. It's empty. Probably not. There's probably residual smudge oil that they used here in the citrus industry in Highland, California, in the greater Inland Empire, Redlands, and all around here, to take care of the citrus fields. Grapefruit, orange, lemon, you name it. In this tank, they had smudge oil. The smudge oil was used to refill the smudge pots. That there were millions of them in this area over the last, 100 plus years. They're all but gone now, and they're all collectibles, and they're just vanishing from the landscape of Highland and the Inland Empire. The smudge oil in here was also used for weed abatement, to get rid of the weeds. I know it wasn't the safest thing by today's standards. They'd probably be chased down the street using this, probably very toxic, but at the time it was the best that you could do, and that's how the citrus industry was able to sustain itself and have great Valencia and Washington oranges. This bed, this pipe that was used to spray, the couplings all over this trailer and other trailers that we've seen have all been modified. I don't know if I've said modified several times in this video, but when you live on the farm, you do what you can with what you have. You didn't have superstores to go find what you needed, so you fixed and built things on your own. See that? If something got bent, you fixed it. If something got a hole in it, you welded it. They put a different modified tongue to the front of this. Looks like a Pioneer bed to pull this with modern tires. So there's a lot of equipment that has been used on these farms to take care of an industry that made Highland famous. Charlie Masso is the genius by putting a lot of this stuff that you hear and see on this truck. I don't know if you could see up here on top. I'm touching it up here. It's a platform where the workers could climb onto this solid steel platform to tie down the loads. These sides were used on both sides and in the back to haul trash, clippings, other organic debris to take to the dump, to Mentone, when Mentone and Highland, when they both had dumps, and then eventually to Redlands, to the Redlands dump. This multi-use truck was basically used to move crop from the field. Went from the horse-drawn one to the tractor pull one, and now we have a truck. So we followed technology all the way to having a cabin, warmth, a radio, a heater, mirrors and lights, and a little more of the fine accommodations of technology to help you during the cold winters here in the citrus groves of Highland. This Caterpillar tractor was used to pull the discs on these steep slopes. So you can imagine this thing just churning up the soil. What's unique about this particular vehicle, check this out. A crank. When was the last time you saw that? This isn't a hybrid. This is a crank. And from what I understand from the owner of the ranch, this was quite difficult to start. And I'm sure on cold mornings when your hands are frozen to the steel, it's quite difficult to get going, but work had to get done here on the farm, rain or shine. Caterpillar Register US. This is still solid. One more great piece of equipment here on the McLean Ranch that had to deal with the citrus industry in Highland. We had a wonderful time today in our adventure at the McLean Farm in Highland, California, where there are plenty of citrus products and oranges. Thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel, Paul Prada Photography on a Journey. Get yourself out on the trail, get some oranges, enjoy life, and go on a journey.